In this video, we will explore the role of industry analysis in fundamental analysis and how to understand the environment in which a company operates. When we analyze a company, we generally start with a broad view and narrow it down. We begin with an economic analysis to ask if the economy will grow or decline in the foreseeable future. Once we understand the big picture, we move down to industry analysis. Here, we ask how a specific industry is impacted by those economic conditions. To do this effectively, we need to understand the structure of the market. First, we have the economic sector, which includes broad segments contributing to national income, such as agriculture or manufacturing. Then we have the business sector, which is a group of related industries like financial services or industrial metals. Finally, we get to the industry level, which is a grouping of firms offering similar products or services to meet the same customer need. For example, the auto industry or the insurance industry. Now that we understand the structure, let's look at the key questions you need to ask during your analysis. Imagine the industry as a central circle and we have 6 crucial questions surrounding it. First, you must identify clearly what industry the company operates in. Second, you need to ask how much this industry is impacted by the up and down cycles of the economy. Third, you should estimate the potential size of this industry. Fourth, look at the past and ask how the industry has performed and what drove that performance. Fifth, analyze the level of competition and how it affects the power of companies to set prices. And sixth, look for long-term trends, often called secular trends, and any government regulations that might act as headwinds or tailwinds. Defining the industry might sound easy, but there is often a classification trap. For example, under a standard national classification, all passenger cars might be grouped together. However, the dynamics of a luxury car manufacturer are very different from a maker of entry-level compact cars. If we treat them as the same, we might make mistakes. Let us take the case of PVR Limited to understand this better. PVR is a cinema exhibitor, but who does it compete with? On one side, it competes with OTT platforms like Netflix. On the other side, it competes with out-of-home entertainment like live theaters or sporting leagues. If we define the industry too narrowly, we miss the competition from OTT. If we define it too broadly as entertainment, it becomes hard to compare. A similar parallel happened with cameras. Entry-level cameras lost their market not to other cameras but to mobile phones. So, a strict industry definition would have missed that competition entirely. To help with these definitions, analysts often use standardized systems like the Global Industry Classification Standard or GICS. This system uses a 4-tier hierarchy to organize companies. It starts with 11 broad sectors, which breaks down into 25 industry groups, then into 74 industries, and finally into 163 sub-industries. For example, within the energy sector, we have an industry group called energy. Under that, we have an industry called energy equipment and services. And finally, under that, we have a specific sub-industry for oil and gas drilling. This detailed structure helps us compare apples to apples when analyzing companies. Next, let us look at how industries react to economic changes, which is called industry cyclicality. We can group industries into 3 buckets. First, we have defensive industries shown on the left. These companies like food or healthcare have low volatility. Even if income drops, people still need to eat and buy medicine, so these industries are stable. Second, we have semi-cyclical industries like consumer durables. These grow when the economy is good and decline during a recession, but they usually maintain a base level of demand. Finally, We have deep cyclical industries like steel or capital goods. These are extremely volatile. In a recession, their revenue can drop significantly, but when the economy recovers, they see massive growth due to pent-up demand. Another vital part of analysis is market sizing and trend analysis. Why do we size the market? Because if a market is underpenetrated, there is high headroom for growth. But if a market is mature, growth rates will naturally decline. The challenge here is that data is often scarce, especially if there are many unorganized or private players. To solve this, we use two approaches. The first is the top-down approach, which looks like a funnel. We start with macroeconomic factors and narrow it down to an industry estimate. The second is the bottom-up approach, which is like building a wall with bricks. Here, we look at the revenue of individual companies like company A, company B, and company C, and add them together to get the total industry size. Let us apply these sizing techniques to a real world example like sizing a therapy market. In a top-down calculation, step 1 is to identify the number of patients undergoing the therapy. Step 2 is to ascertain the average expenditure per patient. We then multiply these two numbers to arrive at the total revenue estimate. On the other hand, for a bottom-up calculation, we would start by identifying all hospitals providing the therapy. Then we isolate the revenue specifically from this therapy and sum up the revenues from all hospitals. This aggregate sum gives us the industry size from the ground up. Beyond size and cycles, we must watch for secular trends, which are long-term shifts that change an industry. There are 5 main drivers here. First is technological advancement, like how electric vehicle battery tech is changing the auto sector. Second is change in income levels. As economies grow, people have more disposable income and buy premium products. Third is demographic changes. For instance, an aging population in Japan leads to less beer consumption. Fourth is culture and taste. For example, the influence of Western culture has increased the demand for Western clothing in new markets. And fifth is regulation or government policy, such as how the implementation of GST improved logistics efficiency but reduced demand for commercial vehicles. These secular trends often lead to a concept called value migration. This is when long-term advantage shifts from one entity to another. Shareholders of the winning entity see a gain in value while the losers see a decline. This can happen in different ways. First, we have geographic migration. For example, the horizontal drilling technology shifted value to US oil exploration, giving them a cost advantage over other nations. Second, we have cross-industry migration. This is when one industry gains at the cost of another. A classic example is how digital cameras rose while the film roll industry, dominated by companies like Kodak, declined. Value migration also happens vertically and between competitors. On the left panel, we see migration across the value chain. For instance, in the Indian telecom price war, prices fell and telecom companies lost value. However, because data became cheap, people consume more content, so value migrated to digital content providers. On the right panel, we see migration across companies. A great example is BlackBerry versus Apple. BlackBerry had a competitive advantage in email efficiency. But when smartphones emerged with 2G and later technologies that matched that service, the value migrated away from BlackBerry to Apple, the new winner. Finally, every industry goes through a business life cycle, much like a living organism. It starts with the pioneering stage, where the concept is just being proven and is not yet widely adopted. Then it moves to the growth stage, where the concept is viable and adoption is steep. Next is the maturity stage, where most potential customers are already using the product, so growth slows down. Eventually, it hits the declining stage where new technology or preferences replace the product. However, sometimes there is a reinvention and revival where a new application is found for the old product, starting the cycle again. Let us conclude by looking at the life cycle of the Indian call taxi industry. In the late 20th and early 21st century, this industry emerged due to higher phone penetration and income. Over the next decade, it saw tremendous growth. However, disruption arrived with the advent of app-based aggregators. This led to a significant result where the traditional call taxi industry declined. This caused economic displacement, where drivers had to reskill. As an analyst, remember that while secular trends track with these life cycles, you should focus on cyclical trends to understand the medium and short-term movements.